Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Summarizing the Bible. Moving right along into Genesis chapter 7. It is the beginning of the Great Flood and Noah's obedience to God's commands. We got a lot to unpack here today. Whew, a lot of information. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So God instructs Noah to last chapter we talked about building the ark. Now God is instructing Noah to enter the ark with his family and with pairs of every kind of land animal. Now, specifically land animal, because if you got a big boat, you're going to have a lot of water. Obviously, you're not going to have a need to put the fish and the dolphins and the shark and the whales and all of them on the boat. That would be counterproductive. The sea animals are going to be all right. So land animals on the ark. There are 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean animals. And we will come back to that, the distinction. We will come back to that. So just hold on to that thought for a second. After 7 days of being on the ark, hold on to that thought as well. We'll come back to that. After 7 days, heavy rain begins to fall. And it falls for 40 days and 40 nights, thus creating a mass flood that floods the entire earth, covering the highest mountains, and all living creatures outside the ark perish in the flood. Noah, his family, and the animals inside the ark, fish and them excluded, are the only survivors. These waters remain for 150 days. That's the general summary of chapter 7. Now let's dig a little deeper. Genesis 7:10. I said we'll come back to this. Actually, I'm going to start in verse 8 through 10. It says, of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and birds and everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, I've got that underlined, after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. Why is this significant? Well, imagine God is telling you to come on the earth. God is telling you to do these things. And then all of a sudden, you're locked in this ark. And then there's a silent week of waiting. God says, get on the boat. It's about to go down. And then you're on the boat for 7 days, nothing. Imagine the faith that is required. Sitting on this massive boat, sealed with animals, while the world outside continued life as usual, life as normal, just continuing doing things. Likely, they continued to mock him until the very first raindrop fell. 7 days. But it's interesting because we can also see this as a parallel of the 7 days of creation, which symbolizes a new beginning for the world. It is a powerful reminder to us that obedience to God is sometimes requires patience, even when nothing seems to be happening. It reminds me of this song that I discovered recently. There's a guy on TikTok named Brad Lee, and I talked about him in a video recently. And he's got this song that he wrote. It's a powerful song called Greater Is He. I encourage you to look it up. But the main point of this, one of the main, in fact, the chorus, it says, what? I'm sorry, this isn't the chorus. Forgive me. But one of the lines, probably one of the most powerful lines in the song, it says, when I feel you the least, you're moving the most. When we feel God the least, he is sometimes doing great things. You know, they're sitting in this boat for seven days, sitting in silence, waiting for this thing to happen. God's moving. He's preparing to move. They may not have felt it, but God is preparing to move. So that's the general overview of chapter 7. Now, I want to further investigate a couple deeper questions. First of all, number one, the easier of the questions I want to examine. What is the difference between clean and unclean? I told you we'd come back to it. So clean, he asked for 7 pairs of clean animals. These people had permission for eating and sacrifice. These were animals that chewed cud and had divided hooves, such as cows and sheep and goats and certain types of birds and certain types of fish. Whereas the unclean animals were not suitable for being eaten or for being sacrificed. Animals without divided hooves and who didn't chew cud, such as pigs and camels, other types of birds, and certain types of sea creatures, specifically without fins and scales. So like, your shrimp, your shellfish, etc., etc. And the purpose of these, so the purpose of him bringing the 7 pairs of clean, one is to have sacrifices after the flood waters subside, and eventually, kind of foreshadowing to chapter 9, being able to eat these animals. They did not eat the animals prior to God granting them permission further on in chapter 9. The unclean animals, this is interesting. The only 1 pair of the unclean animals. Why is this? Because God wanted to ensure the survival and continuation of those species after the flood. Even though those animals were not suitable for sacrifices or for food, there was a foreshadowing here of the Mosaic law that was to come, and it showed God's preparation for future needs of human beings. So that's kind of the general overview of the clean versus unclean. And now I want to get into the more difficult question that is so often asked. If God is so loving, why does he flood the earth? That is a tough question that gets asked so often. If we have this loving God, why did he flood the earth? Well, I came up with 5 points. Number 1, there was the human wickedness and corruption. See, the world at this point was filled with so much violence and corruption and evil. God, being a just and holy God, he could not sit back and ignore the extent of the sin that was here on the earth. Secondly, we have to look at God's patience and the warning that he gave. In 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, often referred to as the Hall of Fame of the faith, Noah is called a preacher of righteousness. So this is suggesting that Noah had time to warn people about the impending doom while building the ark. See, he didn't build the ark overnight. It took decades. It took years upon years. This is not an impulsive decision by God. There was a long period of patience from God. Thirdly, it's about preserving righteousness from the start, not just about the destruction of the earth, but about renewal of the earth. See, God preserved Noah and God preserved his family because Noah was righteous and blameless. Number 4, God's justice and love go together. A loving God must also be just like our own parents punish us. Imagine, if you will, a judge who simply let a criminal off carefree. This flood is both an act of justice, punishing the sin, as well as an act of mercy by preserving Noah and future generations that will come from Noah and his family. Finally, number 5, it is a foreshadowing of our salvation. See, instead of water, God later on provides Jesus as a way to cleanse humanity from their sin. Noah and his family is saved by an ark, while people today can be saved through Christ. While this flood is a severe act of judgment, it did not come without love, it did not come without warning, and it did not come out without a plan for redemption. There's a lot there to digest, so I'm going to finish it there. I hope you are blessed. I hope you're encouraged. I hope you learned something new. We'll see you back here for Genesis chapter 8.